Hello, and welcome back to Sleepy History Tales. Thank you for joining me today. And before we begin, I'm curious. Have you ever looked at an old photograph and felt that something just beneath the surface was wrong? Something that made the hair on the back of your neck rise ever so slightly. In the quiet streets of early 20th century Kent, a young girl named Millicent Ashford sat for a family portrait. Her tiny face framed in dark ringlets, a smile playing across her lips that seemed far too knowing for her age. Behind that innocent expression, however, lay a shadow that would stretch across decades, touching the lives of countless people in ways no one could have imagined. From mysterious deaths in sleepy English villages to a trail that led across continents, Millicent's story unfolds like a dark puzzle, one piece at a time. In today's tale, we'll follow the path of this extraordinary disturbing figure, exploring her childhood, her chilling actions, and the mysteries that kept authorities baffled for decades. Stay with me, and let's uncover the story behind that haunting smile. Then came Constance. What the doctors described as a complete nervous breakdown consumed her. She was institutionalized at the Moseley Hospital in London, where she remained fragile and withdrawn until her death in 1925. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she absorbed the weight of these events. And what became of Millicent? She asked, her voice almost a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the shadows that seemed to cling to the photograph. Mr. Peaton's expression grew heavier still. That is where the story turns truly sorrowful. The child was sent to live with Constance's sister in Yorkshire, but she never seemed to settle there. According to estate records, Millicent ran away in 1922 when she would have been about 11. Despite searches by the local constabulary and private investigators hired by the family, she was never found. The shopkeeper gestured gently toward the photograph. This portrait? It was discovered in the attic of the family home when the estate was finally cleared last month, wrapped in brown paper tucked in a trunk alongside other family documents and Millicent's personal belongings. Perhaps the last formal image of the family, taken before everything unraveled. Sarah's gaze lingered on the child's face once more. That strange, knowing smile now seemed even more unsettling, shadowed by the tragedies that had followed. The following Monday, Sarah sat in her office at Cambridge. The Ashford family portrait leaned against a stack of research books on her desk. She had purchased it partly as a period document and partly because she could not shake her fascination with young Millicent's unsettling expression. During her lunch break, she began consulting the university's vast archives, hoping to uncover more about the Ashfords' tragedy. Cambridge's library system held one of the most comprehensive collections of British social records, newspapers, court documents, institutional records spanning centuries. Her search for Herbert Ashford confirmed Mr. Peaton's account. Several 1920 newspaper articles reported his sudden death. The Canterbury Herald described him as a pillar of Kent's business community, a devoted family man whose untimely passing had shocked all who knew him. Yet something in the timing struck Sarah as odd. Herbert had died on November 15th, 1920. And yet, the family portrait bore a studio stamp November 10th, just 5 days earlier. Why would a man healthy and only 42 commission a formal family portrait and then die of a heart attack? Less than a week later, she noted the anomaly. A question hanging in the air, unresolved, whispering for answers. Researching Constance Ashford proved more difficult. Medical records from the 1920s were fragmentary, often lost to time. Still, Sarah discovered a reference in a 1921 medical journal published by Dr. Edmund Hartwell of Moseley Hospital, titled Acute Delusional Disorder, Following Familial Trauma. It described the case of a Mrs. C.A. admitted after her husband's sudden death. Dr. Hartwell's notes were chilling. The patient claimed her daughter had undergone a fundamental change in personality weeks before her husband's passing. Previously sweet and obedient, the child now displayed cruel treatment of pets, inappropriate social behavior, and most hauntingly, an unsettling smile that never reached her eyes. The patient became increasingly agitated when questioned, insisting something had taken possession of her little girl, that this transformation had somehow caused her husband's death. Sarah leaned back in her chair, a cold realization crawling through her. She lifted a magnifying glass, returning once more to Millicent's photograph, lingering on that enigmatic smile. Determined to uncover more, she planned a trip the following weekend to Whitstable to visit Henderson and Sons photography studio, hoping the source of the portrait might reveal clues about the shadows hiding behind that chilling knowing expression. Sarah's next destination was the very studio whose stamp appeared on the back of the Ashford family photograph. Henderson and Son had been operating continuously since 1895, and Sarah hoped the records might shed light on the family's final days together. Mrs. Victoria Henderson, the current owner and great-granddaughter of the studio's founder, greeted her warmly. She listened intently as Sarah described the 1920 Ashford portrait. "Oh yes, I remember seeing that appointment in our old ledgers," Mrs. Henderson said, leading Sarah into a back room lined with filing cabinets, each containing a century's worth of photographic records. "My great-grandfather was meticulous about documenting every session, partly for business and partly because he fancied himself a social historian." She retrieved a leather-bound ledger from 1920 and flipped carefully through its pages. "Here we are, November 10th, 1920. The Ashford family portrait session." She read aloud from the delicate, precise handwriting. "Mr. Herbert Ashford requested an urgent appointment for a formal family portrait. Payment in advance. Mentioned that time was of the essence, though did not elaborate on the reason for the urgency." Sarah leaned closer, her curiosity sharpening. "And here's something unusual," Mrs. Henderson continued. "My great-grandfather made additional notes about the session itself. He wrote, 'Unusual sitting.'" Mr. and Mrs. Ashford appeared nervous, almost frightened. The child, however, seemed remarkably composed and cooperative, though there was something unsettling about her demeanor. She smiled constantly throughout the session, but it was not the natural smile of a happy child. Mrs. Ashford seemed particularly disturbed by her daughter's behavior, frequently asking her to stop smiling like that and act normally. Mrs. Henderson paused, looking up at Sarah. "Rather odd, isn't it? Most photographers would be delighted to have such a cooperative subject." The notes continued. "Mr. Ashford appeared to be in poor health, sweating profusely, despite the cool November weather, complaining of chest pains. When I suggested postponing the session, he became agitated, insisting the portrait must be completed that day. 'We may not have another opportunity,' he said, though he refused to explain what he meant by this comment." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Did your great-grandfather make any other observations about the family?" she asked. Mrs. Henderson turned the page. "Yes, a final note after they left. Most disturbing session in 30 years of portrait photography. The child's smile never wavered once during the entire hour-long sitting, not even when her parents were clearly upset. There was something almost predatory about her expression, as if she was studying the camera and everyone in the room with calculating intelligence far beyond her years. The words lingered in the air, heavy and cold. Determined to dig deeper, Sarah made her way to the Kent County Archives, seeking Herbert Ashford's death certificate and any related medical examiner's reports. The archival building, a sprawling Victorian structure, had served various governmental functions over the decades. Its basement storage rooms contained thousands of official documents dating back to the 1800s. After hours of sifting through dusty files, Sarah finally found Herbert Ashford's death certificate, along with a detailed coroner's report that had never been made public. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest due to acute myocardial infarction. Yet, the attending physician, Dr. Marcus Whitmore, had included puzzling observations in his private notes. The patient exhibited symptoms consistent with severe poisoning. Dr. Whitmore had recorded dilated pupils, excessive sweating, irregular heartbeat, and gastrointestinal distress. Yet no obvious source of toxins could be found. According to his notes, Herbert had experienced these symptoms intermittently for roughly 3 weeks prior to his death, always following meals prepared by his daughter, part of what Mrs. Ashford described as Millicent's newfound interest in cooking. Sarah's blood ran cold as she read further. The report described how Herbert initially dismissed the symptoms as stress from his business affairs, but over time, they grew progressively worse. The attending physician's notes grew ever more unsettling. Mrs. Ashford had expressed deep concern over her daughter's recent behavioral changes. Dr. Whitmore recorded that Millicent had begun experimenting with herbs and plants from the family garden, claiming she was preparing special treats for the family. Herbert had encouraged the activity, seeing it as harmless childhood curiosity. But Dr. Whitmore's final observations were chilling. "I attempted to question the child about her father's symptoms," he wrote, as she had been present during many of his episodes. She displayed no emotional distress and answered with unsettling precision, describing his condition in clinical detail, far beyond the understanding of a 9-year-old. When I remarked upon her remarkable composure, she smiled at me in a way I found profoundly disturbing, as if she were enjoying a private joke at the expense of everyone around her. The report concluded, "While I cannot definitively establish a cause of death beyond cardiac arrest, I have documented my concerns regarding the unusual circumstances. I recommend that the local constabulary investigate the domestic situation, particularly the preparation of meals and the child's unusual behaviors. However, given the family's social standing and the lack of concrete evidence, I doubt such an investigation will be pursued." Sarah sat back in stunned silence. The pieces of a horrifying puzzle were beginning to fit together. Her next stop was the Kent Police Museum, a place where historical law enforcement records were preserved for research. She hoped to find police reports connected to Herbert Ashford's death or Millicent's subsequent disappearance. What she discovered, however, was far more revealing. Among the museum's archives lay the private journal of Constable William Thornton, assigned to investigate Herbert Ashford's death following Dr. Whitmore's concerns. Donated by Thornton's family after his death in 1963, the journal contained detailed observations that had never appeared in official reports. November 20th, 1920. Visited the Ashford residence at Dr. Whitmore's request. Mrs. Ashford appeared in extreme distress, not merely grief, but genuine terror. She repeatedly insisted that something was wrong with Millicent and that her daughter had changed in the weeks preceding her husband's death. The journal's entries grew increasingly disturbing. When I attempted to interview young Millicent, I was struck by her wholly inappropriate response to her father's death. She showed no grief, only a constant smile, what her mother described as not her real smile. When asked about her father's illness, she provided detailed descriptions of his symptoms with clinical detachment, as if recounting a scientific experiment rather than her father's suffering. Sarah read on, her unease deepening. Constable Thornton noted further horrors. Mrs. Ashford showed me several dead animals found in their garden over the past month. Birds, mice, even the family cat. She claimed Millicent had been experimenting on them, though the child insisted she had found them already deceased and was studying anatomy. The manner of death was consistent with poisoning. Millicent displayed no emotion at the sight of these dead creatures, and the most chilling entry came on November 25th. I discovered that Millicent had been systematically gathering plants from the family garden and surrounding countryside, many potentially toxic, including foxglove nightshade and elderberries. When confronted, she claimed she was studying natural remedies from a book found in her father's library. Examination of the book revealed it to be a comprehensive guide to medicinal and poisonous plants with several toxic species carefully marked in what appeared to be the child's handwriting. Thornton's final entry dated December 1st, 1920, left little doubt as to his conclusion. I am convinced young Millicent Ashford was systematically poisoning her father, likely using plant-based toxins difficult to detect in routine examinations. However, I have been ordered to close the investigation due to lack of concrete evidence and the family's prominent social position. No one wants to believe that a 9-year-old child could commit such calculated acts. But I have looked into her eyes, and I am certain we are dealing with something far more dangerous than anyone realizes. Following up on Mr. Peaton's mention of Millicent being sent to live with relatives in Yorkshire, Sarah contacted the North Yorkshire Archives. She hoped to uncover the circumstances surrounding the child's disappearance in 1922. What she discovered painted an even more disturbing picture of Millicent's trajectory after her father's death. An unsettling path that seemed to echo the darkness glimpsed in that enigmatic knowing smile. The records revealed that Millicent had been sent to live with her aunt, Mrs. Penelope Weatherby, in the quiet village of Thornfield near Harriot. Mrs. Weatherby, Constance Ashford's younger sister and a lifelong spinster, had reluctantly agreed to take in her traumatized niece following Constance's institutionalization. Sarah uncovered a series of detailed letters between Mrs. Weatherby and the family solicitor Mr. Harrison Matthews, documenting the rapidly deteriorating situation in Yorkshire. Millicent has been with us for 6 months now, one letter from July 1922 read, "And I must confess that I am deeply concerned about the child's behavior. She shows no grief for her father's death or distress about her mother's condition. Instead, she seems almost pleased by the turn of events, as if everything has worked out exactly as she planned." The correspondence detailed a series of disturbing incidents that began almost immediately after Millicent's arrival. My cook, Mrs. Hartwell, fell gravely ill after eating soup that Millicent had helped prepare. The doctor could not identify the cause, but her symptoms were eerily similar to those Mrs. Ashford described regarding her husband's final weeks. Mrs. Hartwell has recovered, but she refuses to allow Millicent in the kitchen and insists the child was testing something on her. Even more troubling were the observations about Millicent's social interactions. The village children avoided her entirely. At first, Mrs. Weatherby thought it was due to her being new and withdrawn from trauma. But reports quickly revealed something darker. Tommy Middleton, the blacksmith's son, claimed that Millicent had offered him sweets that made him violently ill. Mary Fletcher recounted that Millicent had shown her strange plants in the woods, suggesting she taste them. Mary refused, yet local apothecaries later confirmed the plants were highly toxic. Mrs. Weatherby's final letter, dated September 1922, was filled with desperation. I can no longer care for this child. There is something fundamentally wrong with Millicent, beyond the trauma of losing her parents. She studies people as a scientist, studies laboratory specimens, always watching, always calculating. Yesterday, I caught her in my room going through my personal papers and medications. When I confronted her, she smiled with that same disturbing expression that Constance had written about. I fear for my safety, Mr. Matthews. This child is dangerous. 3 days later, Millicent Ashford vanished from the Weatherby household, leaving behind only a note written in her careful, precise script. Thank you for your hospitality, Aunt Penelope. I have learned everything I need to know here. The North Yorkshire Constabulary conducted an extensive search for the 11-year-old, yet Sarah's research suggested Millicent had not simply disappeared. She had been actively evading capture while continuing her dangerous experiments on unsuspecting victims. Detective Inspector Harold Blackwood, who led the search, documented a series of chilling events in his official reports. Between September 1922 and March 1923, 7 unexplained deaths occurred across small villages in North Yorkshire. All were sudden heart-related deaths in well-regarded community members following weeks of intermittent illness. Blackwood noted a haunting commonality. Each victim had befriended a young girl claiming to be an orphan seeking shelter and had consumed food or drink she had prepared. Local witnesses described the girl as unusually mature for her age, with dark ringlet curls and a disturbing smile that never seemed genuine. Even more chilling was the methodical nature of her actions. The girl would appear in a village, claiming to be lost or hungry, often targeting elderly residents or childless couples most likely to offer help. She would stay for weeks, slowly earning trust, all while secretly experimenting with local plants and assisting in the household kitchen. The victim's symptoms began subtly. Minor digestive complaints easily dismissed, but over time these ailments worsened, culminating in sudden fatal cardiac episodes. Sarah read on her eyes narrowing as she absorbed Detective Inspector Blackwood's most detailed account filed confidentially with Scotland Yard in March 1923. I am convinced, Blackwood wrote, that we are dealing with a child who possesses not only remarkable intelligence, but a complete lack of moral conscience qualities necessary to commit these calculated murders. She demonstrates sophisticated knowledge of toxic plants and their effects on human physiology, suggesting either formal instruction or painstaking self-directed study. Most disturbing is her methodical testing of different substances and dosages on her victims, as though conducting scientific experiments with human subjects. The investigation had been thwarted at every turn. Local constables and magistrates could not believe an 11-year-old could be capable of such horrors. The very idea seemed inconceivable. A murderous child defying everything society understood about innocence and childhood. Yet Blackwood was certain. Witness testimony confirmed that Millicent Ashford not only committed these crimes, but seemed to derive satisfaction from the suffering she inflicted. His final report, dated April 1923, revealed his despair. The trail has gone completely cold. No reliable sightings have been reported for over a month, and no suspicious deaths matching the pattern have occurred recently. Millicent Ashford has either left the area entirely or has learned to operate with even greater stealth. I fear we may never apprehend this dangerous individual, but Sarah's research had only just begun. While exploring Scotland Yard's historical crime archives, she stumbled upon a file that made her blood run cold: the Smiling Woman murders. A decades-long investigation chronicled a serial killer who had operated across England during the 1930s and 1940s. Detective Chief Inspector Robert Morrison's files described a chilling pattern. Wealthy elderly individuals living alone were systematically poisoned by a young woman who insinuated herself into their lives as a housekeeper companion or distant relative. Survivors and witnesses noted the same unnerving details. The woman always smiled, calculating, disturbing, never reaching her eyes. Even in moments of apparent concern, her smile remained, as if she took secret pleasure in the suffering she caused. Sarah's pulse quickened as she read Morrison's psychological profile. The perpetrator exhibited expert knowledge of plant-based toxins using complex combinations that were nearly impossible to detect. The meticulous experimental approach suggested the beginnings of her craft might have started in childhood. Her emotional detachment and complete absence of empathy marked her as someone profoundly, frighteningly different. And then Sarah found it, a photograph dated 1945. A survivor, wary of the woman who had entered her home, had secretly documented her. The woman appeared to be around 34 years old, her features strikingly familiar, echoing the descriptions from the earlier North Yorkshire cases. Most notably, the photograph captured that same haunting smile, cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of compassion. In that expression, Sarah recognized the shadow of the child she had first seen in the Ashford family portrait all those years ago. She studied the photograph, carefully tracing every detail: the dark ringlets, the precise posture, and above all, the smile. It was the same knowing, unsettling expression, the one that had first drawn her in at Peyton's Antiques shop, now grown with age into something even more formidable. The woman in the photograph was unmistakably an adult Millicent Ashford. The same dark, penetrating eyes, the same delicate facial structure, and most chilling of all, that same unnerving, calculating smile that had first drawn Sarah's attention in the 1920 family portrait. Morrison's investigation had been exhaustive, yet ultimately fruitless. 17 years of careful inquiry, mountains of evidence connecting the crimes to a single individual, and still, she had never been caught. The suspect seemed to vanish whenever investigators drew too near, leaving behind false identities, forged documents, and no trace of her presence. After 1947, her crimes appear to have ceased. Whether she had died, been imprisoned under a new identity, or simply refined her methods, remained a mystery. Sarah's research took an even darker turn. While reviewing post-war immigration records, she discovered a woman matching Millicent's description, departing England for Australia in 1948. Traveling under the name Margaret Mills, she claimed to be a war widow, seeking a new life in the colonies. Yet, Australian records from the 1950s and 1960s revealed a pattern she had perfected, a series of suspicious deaths in nursing homes and private residences, all bearing the signature methods of Millicent Ashford. Known locally as the Angel of Mercy for her apparent devotion to elderly patients, Margaret Mills vanished before authorities could apprehend her. Even more astonishing, Sarah traced her into the 1970s. Records showed she had returned to England in 1971 under a new name, Dr. Margaret Ashworth, presenting herself as a geriatric care specialist. She became administrator of Sunset Manor, a private nursing home serving wealthy elderly patients with few close relatives. Between 1971 and 1995, the home experienced an alarmingly high mortality rate. Yet her reputation remained untarnished, protected by her cultivated image of compassion and dedication. Former staff recalled her unsettling behavior, inappropriate smiles during discussion of terminal diagnoses, and a peculiar fascination with experimenting on her patients using natural remedies. Dr. Ashworth died in 1995, aged 84. Her death recorded as natural causes. But the chilling reality was undeniable. Millicent Ashford had spent over 70 years perfecting her dark craft. From a disturbed child experimenting with crude poisonings to a highly sophisticated serial killer, she had learned to cloak her crimes within the appearance of benevolence and professional legitimacy. And yet, Sarah realized it had all begun in that single haunting photograph. That 1920 portrait had captured more than a moment in time. It had captured a truth, a glimpse of the predator, lurking beneath the mask of childhood innocence. That strange, knowing smile was not the expression of a carefree child, but the cold satisfaction of someone already aware of her capacity to harm, already plotting, already born to this dark path. Standing quietly in her Cambridge office, Sarah gazed once more at the portrait. She understood now that her initial unease had been a subconscious recognition of true evil hidden in plain sight behind the most disarming of smiles. Monsters do not always announce themselves. Sometimes they hide where we least expect them, challenging every assumption we hold about innocence and morality. Sarah eventually donated the photograph to Scotland Yard's Black Museum, where it serves as a chilling reminder evil can emerge at any age, and society's refusal to consider the possibility of childhood monstrosity allowed one of Britain's most prolific serial killers to evade justice for over 7 decades. That frozen, haunting smile continues to disturb viewers, an unblinking witness to the terrifying potential of human nature's darkest inclinations.